This is the Cereal at Midnight podcast. Hello and welcome to the Cereal at Midnight podcast. My name is Heath Holland and Amanda Reyes returns. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. Let me set it up really quickly. I was on social media bemoaning the current state, the implosion of streaming, and how these corporations are basically erasing movies and TV shows to lower their tax bill. I thought it was a dangerous precedent. Amanda stepped in and said, hold on, it's always been this way. If a show got canceled on network television years ago, it was never seen again. I said, that's interesting. Let's talk about it. So in this conversation, we're talking about streaming. We are talking about TV history. We're talking about the idea of things going away. Do they ever really go away? Do we have the technology to prevent that from ever happening? Basically, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So I think it's a really, really interesting conversation. I have so much respect for Amanda. When she talks, I am taking notes because she knows her stuff inside and out. Without further ado, take it away, Amanda.
You know, you and I had talked a little while ago just on social media about all the stuff that's happening with the world of streaming and the studios that control all of the stuff that is streaming. And one of the things you talked about, which I was actually unaware of when I kind of jumped into your conversation, was this idea of recording things and putting them on a streaming service only to pull them and delete the files completely. So nothing exists of the productions and therefore they're gone forever. And I had not been aware of that, which shocked me. And I know it's like a tax loophole, which I can't imagine is going to last very long because there's so many evil and wrong things about it. But when I was looking at your thread, what struck me about it was this idea of people being really upset about things streaming and then not streaming. And me being a person who comes from the golden age of television, not just as somebody who experienced it growing up, but also is a historian for television from the 70s and 80s and even before that, was that, you know, a lot of stuff just does disappear. And a really good example of that might be made-for-TV movies. There's something like 5,000 of them were produced between 1964 and 1999. And I think maybe 10% of them have ever become available on home video. So it's not unusual for me to see things happen and then disappear. And I think you and I were having two different conversations, and you contacted me because you wanted us to kind of dive into the nuances of what it means to the art form and to the business model, right? Is that what you were kind of getting at?
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm concerned. Like, it's a concerning moment right now because we're watching people erase art. And I guess it is two different conversations, but they also feel like the same kind of conversation because it feels like, you know, like in the United States, we've never had to really pay for television before. Yes, we had to pay for cable or things like that. Like in the UK, you pay for a TV license that you know, we've not had to do that. And so I don't know. I feel like there was an expectation, part of it created by, okay, so Bob Iger at the beginning of Disney Plus said, this is going to be an archive of all of Disney's films and television shows. And that lasted for a few years, I guess. And then they start taking things down. And then this year, because I don't think it happened before this year, I think it's really right now is we're seeing them erasing films and television shows for tax write-off purposes. And I'm not sure, because I don't think there's a precedent for this. I'm not sure how long it goes away, if it goes away forever. My understanding was that, well, no, if you write it off, like if you're writing down hundreds of millions of dollars on your taxes, you can't then go monetize it somewhere else. That's why you're writing it off in the first place. So I don't know if this stuff ever ends up on a Tubi or any sort of other streaming service or iTunes or anything like that. That scares me. I don't know.
Yeah. I think the idea of erasing was really shocking to me. But of course, there is a precedence for it because in and I think even in the 70s, when they recorded a lot of stuff on video, they would wipe the videos. And so a lot of like the ABC Wide World mystery entries are gone. They think some of them have been luckily popping up here and there because like, I know there's 60 millimeters for syndicated runs. The Library of Congress has some stuff. I don't know what kind of format it's in. And I know also the UCLA Television Archive has some as well, luckily. And so there's more that still exists than we thought. But there was dozens of movies that were considered just, that's it. If you didn't catch it on ABC at 11:30 at night in 1972, oh, well, it's gone. And that, as a historian, is really upsetting to me. So aside from even the fact that all these people, because am I right? Was it Batgirl? What is the one that they just made it and then it never went,
That was
and
Warner
nobody saw
Brothers,
it?
and Warner Brothers with
Yeah,
Batgirl. Yeah.
that's like really insulting and upsetting, and on a number of levels, and not just this idea of like wiping away what I would consider a historical document, because I think all films have some historical significance, but the idea that I think the filmmakers talked about this, that they made this thing, whether it was for commercial reasons or artistic reasons is up to them, but it was still a product that people worked on and put some effort into. And now it's just, that's it, because the studio benefits from not showing it. And there's something really alarming about that. And I think you are talking about a really interesting moment, because we're here, and I haven't been following it maybe as well as I should have, but we're here in a moment with like the WGA and SAG and AFTRA striking, and people are really getting fed up with the studio systems. And I think you even said something on social media about how you're seeing the studios implode. Was that you? And
I said, well, Spielberg said it too. I didn't know
okay.
Spielberg said it, so I should give him credit, but
Okay, but
we both think it's going to implode. Yeah.
that's two great minds. But I'm maybe wondering if it's okay if there's an implosion, because so the way I look at the streaming is the way I look at the early days of the internet, in that when the internet first came to be, like in a real prominent way, like in the late 90s and early 2000s, all of these businesses came out. And everybody was like, oh, now the world of business is going to be on the internet and everything. And then there was this crash, and like Amazon survived and eBay survived, but a lot of these companies are gone. And that's unfortunate, right? And I'm not trying to say that was right, but they had to kind of figure out where the middle ground was. I think it tried to explode too fast. And then because they saw this opportunity and there was no way to sustain it because they didn't know what they were doing really yet. And then now we're in like this internet model 2.0, where businesses can survive because they've understood things differently than they did in the originally. And so the way I see the streaming, and I'm talking really fast, but the way I see the streaming world is that one of the things I've been reading about, which is really interesting, is that a lot of these streaming services are like really creating tons and tons of content, but they're not profiting from it.
Yeah.
And it's going to crash because they can't monetize it properly yet. And so I think that this era of streaming is probably going to be like a bomb at some point. It's going to have to explode and kind of die down. And then they're going to rebuild from that with what they learned from this first go. But it's interesting that channels like Tubi, or I don't know what you call them, platforms like Tubi, are doing so well because they're ad supported, which recalls television to all the way back to the history of the beginning of it. So instead of trying to monetize it through subscription services, the channels, I think, or I always want to say channels, but the apps or whatever, like Tubi, are surviving with these ad supported systems and they're showing, they have tons of great content. And a lot of it isn't new. They have dug in, like if you go through their film and television shows, like they just uploaded Amen, every episode of Amen. They had soap on there, which they just pulled down, but they had it on there for a long time. Like all these great classic shows that I love. So interestingly enough, they had Three's a Crowd, the spinoff to Three's Company, but they didn't have Three's Company. But it's on Pluto, which is ad supported. So that was a long-winded answer, but I think what I'm saying is there's a lot of concerning things, but at the same time, maybe this explosion needs to happen, because I think the studios are really trying to strong arm a lot of things that shouldn't be strong armed, and maybe they need to crash and burn before we can really get to a good place in terms of developing really great content that doesn't have to be proliferated times 20, and that can be fed to us in a way that is profitable for them, and we still get really good programming.
Good night, everybody. That was great though. That's like, I mean, you hit it all, but we can go down and we can explore some of those doorways, because yes, it is not sustainable. And it's interesting, when you and I started talking about this, there was the writer's strike, but SAG-AFTRA hadn't joined in yet. And it happened fast in the space of about 2 weeks. It was like all the actors were like, no, this isn't okay. You have far too much control. And I think it's tied into streaming. You know, I saw a thing today, Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother, is talking about not being fairly compensated for Gilmore Girls on Netflix. And so it's all kind of the same thing that's leading to this thing that's happening right now. And it's interesting that streaming has become the new TV. You call them channels. They feel like channels. You know, And to your point, like I was looking for Adam 12 the other day. I just wanted to scratch my Adam 12 itch. And I was like, where is this? And it's not on any of the major streaming networks, but it's on one of the free ad supported with commercials, right? And I was
Right.
like, oh. So it's almost like they get dumped because people think, I don't know if executives think like, well, they're not going to watch this on a, like it's too low for a Netflix or something like that, but we'll ad support it. I don't know. Um,
Well, maybe I can provide just a tiny bit of insight. I won't say who said this, but I deal with a lot of Blu-ray distributors, and a lot of stuff has shown up on Tubi from different companies. And I asked them about licensing their stuff, and they said that Tubi actually pays them better than almost any other service that they've licensed their stuff to. So ad supporting still works.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Maybe the networks, or not the networks, but the executives are like, oh yeah, Adam 12 is this old and nobody cares about Camp McCord when we all care about Camp McCord, let's face it. But like but it's actually probably semi-profitable for them, especially since that show, so old shows actually stopped garnering residuals after 6 runs back in the day. So those are almost like free programming for people, which is why you saw a proliferation of sub channels, sub digi, whatever they used to call them,
Yeah.
like Me TV, because a lot of those programs are a lot cheaper to license. So it might be it might be like they're not dumping the programming, but maybe channels like or apps like Plex and Tubi are seeking out those because they know that they can make a profit off them with the way their system works there.
This is why I wanted to talk to you about this. You're bringing the knowledge.
And now I'm talking about reruns for the director. I don't know how it works for SAG or
Right.
I used to work for the Directors Guild, so I kind of have a general idea of like how residuals work. Now I know it's changed over the years, and I can also speak a little bit to when streaming first came to be, because I was there when Hulu first emerged and nobody'd really heard of streaming, and Apple wanted really badly to actually, Adam 12 was, I think, prototype for them. And it was at the time when Kent McCord was, I think, president of SAG. And the guilds were looking, the writers, maybe not the Writers Guild, but I know the Screen Actors Guild was looking at a lot of money to be paid to the actors for the use of a stream, but nobody knew what to do with it. And so there was a lot of negotiating that went on. And then I know the guild that I worked for came up with a really crazy pay system. And I can't remember how, I could barely understand it. But it might have been based on hits or downloads or something, but it was, they tried to make it manageable so that the studios would feel encouraged to put shows on streaming. And the directors would also feel like they were being compensated for their work. It was very difficult. And I think that's why it was so complicated. And I don't know that it's gotten less complicated since then.
I think it's gotten more complicated, crazily, because there's so many different, it's so fractured now.
Yeah.
There's so many people that I mean, every studio wants to have their own service now, or more than one, because they'll have they'll have the subscription service, and then they'll have like the ad supported service. So it's crazy. I'm curious what you think about, I'd like to talk about piracy if you're comfortable talking about it, because
Sure.
I mean, we talk about the past. It's so true that shows would get canceled and then never seen again, especially if they were under that syndicated, like a 3, under 3 seasons or whatever it needed to be. But we live in a world now where technology dominates everything, and people are already pirating so much. And I wonder sometimes, and maybe you have some insight into this, but what is a studio or an executive thinking when they're writing these shows off, or these movies or whatever they may be? I've pirated them. I'll go ahead and say it. Like, I've downloaded some of these shows or supported people that are burning these to disc or whatever. Nothing really goes away now through technology. Like, nothing has to go away. Nothing ever really does go away. If they're removing a legal way for people to watch something that they want to see, I feel like it's just pushing people to steal it.
I agree with that. I've had a really back and forth relationship with piracy. I survive on it because a lot of stuff I write about, I can only get it through certain channels, the dark web of TV movies, right? And so, and I have found people who have large supplies of things that will send me copies of stuff for money. And but at the same time, this is a hard question to answer because I've only recently become really okay with like people saying, hey, this is here and you can watch it for free. It used to drive me nuts because I feel like it discourages people from releasing things legally if they see that people are just going to watch it on YouTube or whatever. You know what I mean? But if it's completely unavailable and there's no way for you to get it, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? And I feel like there could be two sides to this argument. It's maybe feels like a sense of entitlement that we feel like we should see everything. You know what I mean? There's so much happening in the world, and we care about this TV show. Why? Right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, these are works of art, and these are things that are important to people. And if you take them away from them, especially if they're willing to pay for the service that was providing it, then go for it. You know what I mean? If they've taken away what you want to support, then you're going to have to find another method. You know what I mean? So it's a complicated issue. I think everybody sort of dabbles in it to a degree. If they're any kind of cinephile, you have to. But I think where it gets me is when I hate when I do commentaries on movies and then I see people promoting it on YouTube, and I'm like, oh, I wish they would buy the Blu-ray. You know what I mean? Because
What do you mean? Like they're stealing it?
No, like they're just watching it on YouTube instead of buying the Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then it discourages corporations from wanting to release more TV movies.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Like that bothers me. But but some of these movies are really rare and they just show up on YouTube, and I'm all over it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And now I've actually started promoting it. I used to not do that. I hated when people did that. You know, I'm like, don't tell them, because then somebody's going to complain about it. I will actually say, when I worked at the Guild, when YouTube first appeared, and I won't say who it was, but a TV movie director called, somebody had always wanted to talk to, and he was very upset that his movie had been uploaded in chapters. Remember when YouTube uploaded full films in chapters? And he wanted to know what his residuals were going to be. And we were like, well, somebody in Kokomo uploaded that. I don't know how to help you. And so my boss's boss, who was one of the really high up people at the Guild, had to talk to him, and he explained everything. But like, I think that's what made me really sensitive to it, was because this filmmaker made a really great film, and now lots of people are going to benefit from it, but he's not. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
And I got really
we see that side of it, right? Because we know, not only do we care about it, and we care about the people that made it and the people that were in it and the grip, right? I mean, we care about the people, the team that made these things, but we also are invested in the success of them as art. And so we're involved in some of this stuff too. And we know the people that did this, and it, like, I know, again, I can't say who it is, but I know somebody that told me, I made this movie and I'm seeing it. I haven't sold a lot of it, but I'm seeing people pirating it, and it's tons of people are pirating it. And I'm like, well, that's really unfortunate, because you want to support art, you want to support artists. Well, I do. I can say not everybody does, but I do. And it's tough. It's really tough, because you do walk a line between wanting to support art, supporting the artist, and then wanting access to things that might not get released otherwise. You know how long I waited for Hawaiian Eye to get some sort of a legitimate, like a release? Like, it's not going to happen. So, you know, and so I try to do it only when I know it's okay is not the right word, but
well, when it's completely unavailable, I think that makes it. Yeah. Oh, I will say that makes it okay. Like, there's a show, speaking of things that get lost. So I'm obsessed with this show called Lottery. I think it ran 13 episodes. I'm not even sure anymore. I watched it when I was 13. It starred Ben Murphy and this guy named Marshall Colt. And it was like that show, The Millionaire, from the 50s, where these people give people $1 million and then we see what happens to their lives or whatever. And I love that show. It's not ever going to come out anywhere. It's not. And somebody uploaded it onto YouTube, but in the German release, so it's in German. And so that's the only way I can watch it now. Are
you learning German?
No, I want to really bad. I keep checking to see if it's been re-uploaded with even subtitles or something. There's got to be a way around it. But like, that show's just gone forever.
Yeah.
No studio was like, hey, we should release Lottery on DVD. I'm sure it's not going to sell, you know? And so I have to, if I'm going to ever get it, it will have to be a bootleg. Mm-hmm. And I'm comfortable with that, because that movie show came out in like 1984 or 83, and now it's 2023. And hey, if it's not available, I feel okay with it. So I don't know if you're talking about more new stuff, because so much that's new does have so many different access points to it that could be profitable for people. So that's a little tougher for me. But even then, I think it depends, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if I answered that question, but
well, it's tricky is what we're coming down to. And with these new shows, so there's that Willow show. So Disney made a show, it's a Willow
oh yeah,
pseudo
yeah.
sequel. I'm not particularly interested in it. I did buy a pirated version because I wanted to, it just bothered me. I did, I know. It just really pissed me off because I was like, this doesn't have to, so I did that, but I'm like, why not? If you're gonna write it off for a tax write down, well, they didn't tap any digital distribution. They didn't tap, digital video on demand. They didn't tap, Amazon Prime or like all these different revenue streams totally off the table. They're like, we'd rather it just go away. Now I've met Warwick Davis, who played, the title character, and I'm like, I just feel like his children will never see this, or his grandkids will never see this now. Like, it's just gone. It just bothers. There's something, it just feels ethical. It feels really gross. It feels really slimy and corporate in a way that we don't often see now. Or maybe we do see it, but it's dressed differently. Like executives, they don't have the cigar. And they're like, let me tell you, kid,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna make
yeah.
you a star. It's different. It looks different, but it's the same behavior. It's like, they're watching the bottom line and they're doing whatever they have to do to maximize profits for the shareholders at the end of every quarter is what it comes down to.
Yeah,
And I say, nay, nay.
yeah, that's the ugliness of Hollywood, because it is this really weird mixture of business and art in a way that no other art form, maybe the music industry, who I know suffered greatly with like Napster and stuff, but like, and Spotify, but like, it's such a weird amalgamation of like guys in ties who have like these business degrees, who like think movies are cool, and maybe if they produce movies they'll meet pretty girls. And then there are like filmmakers who probably think they'll meet pretty girls, but like also like have gone to film school or not and have a real passion for it, and then they have to somehow work together when the executives are looking at, well, is there a scare every 7 seconds? How dressed or undressed is this girl? Do you have, I need like an explosion every 15 minutes. And then the filmmaker's like, well, but the plot doesn't require that. Well, but you need to fit it in because that's what sells or whatever. So like, it's such a weird combo. And I think sometimes you can tell when studios have really interfered with things, but I think that there's also like this weird, it's sort of like how when we talk about such a strange connection, but we talk about the patriarchy, there's no like group of white men sitting in a room directing culture, but it is kind of directed by white men, like who through the years have decided how we're going to be. And so I think in the background, even if the executives aren't like looming over the filmmaker, there is so much behind them just being in the business that they have to sort of subliminally kind of understand that and work within those confines. And sometimes it can really mess up a vision, and so I don't know how any films get made, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's a really uneasy mix.
Yeah I don't know either. I'm grateful for the ones that do, and I hope that as we wind down, I hope that your work talking about, here I've got the book right here, I hope that your work talking and championing
Thank you.
television films and just television and movies in general, as I throw it to the ground,
I hate this
I
book.
spike it to the ground like a volleyball. I hope that more and more people will discover this stuff and start to see it less as disposable widgets and start to see it more as art. I made a video, I don't even remember when it started, but not long ago I started calling movies art, and I got pushback, and I was like, what? It is art. Like, people create this stuff, they pour their blood, sweat, and tears into it. Yeah, there's going to be exploitation director like Sam Katzman, right? Like, I mean, there's people in the history of the business that may not have been personally invested in what they were making, but the directors, the filmmakers, the writers, everybody wants to do something good. They want to make something that matters.
Yes.
And it's up to us to at least see that and accept that and not be like, it doesn't matter. I don't know. Part of why I get fired up is because I make these videos where I talk about this stuff and people are like, nope, let it burn. Like, all these movies are garbage. Like when I started talking about Disney writing off these movies, people were like, good. I was like, no. It's not good for anything to go away.
Yeah,
Like it's good if it hadn't been made in the first, like if you can stop it from being made, like, oh, maybe this isn't the best use of resources. It did get made. Now we don't want it to just like take out the eraser and make it go away. It
Right.
just burns me up, you know? So I don't know. That's not a
And
good wind down, but that's
no, but
honest.
one thing we were talking about too, we maybe want to bring this up here before we stop, is this idea of like how storage also works though for the people who run the vaults, I guess, at the studios. So one thing we were talking about was like, I think somebody left a comment on your thread about, well, all these things came out on DVD, but like, for instance, when you're digitizing something, it doesn't just stay in one form, because everything gets upgraded. And from what I understand, I went to the seminar and some people who worked for, I think, CBS came and talked, and they were talking about how they have to save 2 copies of everything. And then when everything gets upgraded, then they have to upgrade everything from the library and then save 2 more copies. And at the time they were remastering Happy Days, and they had to they couldn't get the music rights because they used a lot of classic music from the 50s for that show. So they had to hire somebody to come in and make music that fit the scenes, because they had like a dance number with Richie and somebody. And so they had to make it close enough that the dancing worked, but not close enough that they would get sued by the original songwriters, right? And so that cost money. And so this is maybe, I'm not trying to side with the studios here, but it's this. So there's a lot going on. And I think it's important that if we're to understand that some of the studios are trying to support these things, but it is also like an uphill battle. We can't digitize every episode of One Life to Live as much as I would like. Music rights plays a big part in that, but just because there's thousands of hours of content, and it's not, there's just a few archivists that can do this, right? And so I guess to agree with you, to bring that up as like a point of contention, but also to agree with you that why burn that to the ground? Clearly somebody's taking care with some of this stuff because it matters. And you can tell me till you're blue in the face that Happy Days doesn't matter, but because it's a sitcom, but it does. It totally does.
Yeah.
And why would you want to wipe something away? And also, just because you don't get something from it personally doesn't mean that it doesn't A, have historical importance, or B, doesn't have meaning to somebody else, like really great meaning. So like, don't shit on other people's stuff. But so it is an uphill battle. And to that degree, I understand what the studios are up against. But if they're like willy-nilly erasing new stuff just because they might save some money, then they need to think about their business model more intensely, and they need to learn about caring for the products that they're actually making. Because until they do that, they are going to just implode. And then Bob Iger and his $23 million a year job, or however much he makes, that's gone, you know. So and I have a real bug up my butt about him because of the soaps. Like, he annihilated ABC soaps, him and the guy that ran Daytime, Brian Franz. So I don't have a lot of respect for anything Bob Iger says anyway. And but he's just shooting himself in the foot by like crapping all over this stuff that he's making now. You know what I mean? And destroying an archive. That's just like, it's not book burning, but it's like, you're getting there. You know what I mean? You're starting to do things that are really like destructive to the culture, is maybe what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we could do another 30 minutes on Bob Iger, but I'm not going to, because
he's not worth it.
The extent of people's complaints about Bob Iger right now well, they love him because he bought Marvel and he bought Star Wars. That's what it comes down to, is they're like, oh, now Disney has these things, but Disney didn't know what to do with those things. And I would argue that they ruined those things by oversaturation. And that's not me taking on the internet, because there's good stuff there. That's fine. But his legacy is going to be, I bought it. I don't know what to do with it, but I bought it, because he just wants to boost the portfolio, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, what a hero. What a great guy.
Yeah.
And then he's like, to your point, he's just burning everything else down because he doesn't care about art. I mean, it's the same thing we see with Zaslav over at Warner Brothers. Like, he doesn't know anything about the classic movie catalog or Warner Brothers history. He's there to make money for the company, and he'll walk away with tens of millions of dollars when it's all said and done, as he walks away from the ashes. It'd be like one of those slow motion action movies where they walk away in slow motion, there's like explosion behind him.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
He could start by maybe we could start by not making movies that have budgets of like $1 gazillion. And
The gross national product of a small nation.
yeah, you would actually make profits if your movies weren't like, you could have one $300 million movie if you want, but like you don't have to have 6 of them a year or whatever, it's
It
ridiculous.
wasn't that long ago that you'd get a few huge movies in the summertime and then middle budget movies most of the other time, and even some smaller budget movies. And like now it's teeny tiny or it's massive.
Yeah.
It's unsustainable,
I agree.
That's what we're talking about. That's why this is all happening to begin with. This is because it's not sustainable. And these studios are like, well, we got to save some money somehow. So let's burn these things, just burn them down and try to save some tax dollars. I knew there would be no resolution to this conversation. I think we've probably taken it as far as we can.
Angry.
I know, but I appreciate you sharing your insight and your experience and your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I made sense.
You did. You got anything you want to talk, like you anything you want to promote, or can you announce, or what are you up to? Have you done 2 or 3 commentaries this morning already?
Yeah, I did 12 commentaries when I got up at 6. And 6 hours ago. I just do them really fast. No, I don't know that I have anything coming out right now. I do know that I worked on the Emmanuel box set for Severin along with Kayla Janice, and that's going to be this giant, massive, it's like 23 films that I think the board game got sold out, but there was all these really neat like merch things that came with it. And it's got a ton of great supplemental materials. And if you love Laura Gemser, and I know you do, this really spotlights what a special person she was. And it has a lot of her non-Emmanuel movies that they just ended up calling Emmanuel to ride on her fame. It's really her complete filmography, and it's pretty amazing. So that's coming out this month, I think, from Severin.
Can you believe that their YouTube channel got taken down because of that trailer?
I know. I have no idea what the trailer. I think I watched the trailer. I don't remember being super.
It's YouTube.
Naughty.
It's like YouTube's out of control.
Well, it's weird because like I could go on YouTube right now and probably watch like a movie that came out 2 years ago, but somehow like an episode of Chips will get pulled down. And it's like, all right, I don't understand this.
Eric Estrada, he's so incendiary. He's really controversial.
Get rid of him. He's too sexy.
Yeah. Oh, too sexy. No.
Yeah, it might be it. But yeah, I don't understand how. I guess that's a really good indicative form of the studios and corporations in general. Who knows why they do what they do?
It's bots running everything. It's computer programs that are running the whole show, and there's no nuance or like human judgment to go, oh, I almost lost my channel a couple of weeks ago because of a copyright lawyer or copyright pirate. I'll tell you about that in a second. Okay. Well, anything else? Did you have anything else you want to talk about or promote, or
no?
I think that books, podcast.
Not right now. I mean, I have a lot going on, but I'm so overwhelmed and nothing's been announced really new. So I'll just say you can follow me at Made for TV Mayhem on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram, and I'll update anything there.
Okay. And I'll put all the links in the description of this. Amanda, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, I had fun.
I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. There's so much happening right now. I think we're living through an unprecedented time in the history of media. There are some parallels and some precedents for the kind of control that we're seeing, some of the corporate things that are the corporate shenanigans is I guess what I'm trying to say. However, we're seeing it at a time where we have technology that renders a lot of these things unnecessary or at least questionable. And so I think corporate greed, those corporate shenanigans are more in the public eye than they've ever been before. We see them because we have social media, because we have a 24-hour news cycle. We know everything that's going on. We see these decisions unfolding in real time, and we have a voice. We have something to say. We have a part in this ourselves. So I'm curious what you think about all of this. I'd love to hear from you. If you're watching this on YouTube, please thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment. If you are listening to this in podcast form, please rate, review, subscribe. Contact information is in the description of every episode that you see or hear, and do what you can to spread the word about the Cereal at Midnight podcast. Also, follow Amanda Reyes on all of her platforms. She is such a valuable asset for people like us, for people who value our entertainment. And we see it more as just a disposable, consumable product. We love this stuff. So I'm tremendously grateful to Amanda. I'm tremendously grateful to you. Thank you so much. We'll be back soon with another conversation. Until next time, I will catch you later.